if our society continues to force people like myself to go underground with no recourse whatsoever, I think it's very damaging for the society. Pedophiles who have not abused, who only have this attraction but have never acted upon it, have nowhere to go. They are afraid to go to the clergy, to mental health professionals, to their own families, for fear of ostracism, being reported to the police, or whatever else might happen to them. They might lose their jobs, they might be thrown out, and they're not willing to take that step because of their fear. Now, there's a lot of us who have chosen to abide by the law that society has placed. Yet at the same time, whilst we have done so, society does not give us any ability to cope with the attraction. There's no way that we can go to a psychologist and talk through these things, because the psychologist might say, well, there's reporting laws and liability laws. If I don't report this and that person does wind up to go and abuse, then I'll be held accountable for it. And so there's no way out. And it's an absolutely desperate existence for so many people. It's much easier for me because I'm out. I have released the pressure. But there's millions of others who have not been able to do that because of their fear. And so society really needs to look closely at the amount of ostracism and rejection they put on an entire class of people who've not broken the law.
Okay. Go ahead and get some two shots. Yeah. Reverse angle.
And
I think that speaks to the priority that the people of the state of Missouri, I mean, if you look at the elected officials in the state of Missouri and the values that they hold, this is what families in the state of Missouri hold as dear to them.
But this is academia, and this is somebody who's not an apologist for pedophilia, simply pointing out a relationship or a correlation between three different social movements that have taken place over the last 100 years, and saying not that he agrees with pedophilia, but simply saying that the way the society is approaching it, which is not rational, which is not based upon scientific or medical research, but upon social views or mores, is very similar to what happened with women's rights and with homosexuality.
Well, I think the difference between women's rights and sexuality and pedophilia is the reaction from people is more primal. They want to protect their children, and that is something that is ingrained into a parent. I mean, a mother cub will protect her children at all costs. A parent will protect her child at all costs.
Precisely, but what I'm saying is that Dr. American is not disputing that whatsoever. All he did was point out a relationship. And what I'm saying is that there are a number of people who have pointed out the need for objective research, for dialogue, for discussion, rather than just saying, let's condemn all of these people. Let's just say it's wrong, full stop. We need to discuss, okay, one, why does it happen? What makes me like I am? Now, I'm very curious about that. I don't know what causes it. I certainly didn't choose to be like this myself. But nobody is interested in doing the research, because any professor who says, I'm going to research this, is going to have his budget slashed. It's going to get censured. Look at the Ryan, Tromovich, and Bowserman 1998 meta-analysis that was censured by the United States Congress, many of whom admitted they never even read the study. And the study, what it said was that it was interviews with a lot of young adults and gauging the long-term trauma or effect of sexual abuse as a child. And the conclusion was that the trauma is not as serious as one would believe, or society believes, that actually the effects are much lower. And because of that conclusion, those three researchers were censored by the United States Congress. And so what I'm saying is that no one is trying to understand this whole situation. They're not trying to understand what makes me like I am, what causes this attraction, and what society's reaction does to people who have this attraction. They're just being completely irrational, saying, kill, this is a witch hunt. This is not an inquiry or a logical progression of thought. It is a witch hunt. And when a scientist who is not an apologist simply makes a conclusion like that, that is not in concord with the status quo, then they are made to look awful. Judith Levine in her book Harmful to Minors, where she advocated sexual experimentation between peers, between teenagers, was censured to the point where there was a lot of pressure upon the University of Minnesota Press not to publish the book in the first place. And she didn't say anything in defense of adults and young people having sexual relationships.
Adults don't want to look at, don't want to accept that children are sexual objects.
That's right.
Because they're something to be protected. I mean, you've got to admit, the American country was built on a puritanical base.
Absolutely.
And it's still there. It's probably there. It's probably more there now than it has been any other time in the country's recent history.
Yeah, and that is a lot of what I'm challenging, because I think that this is unhealthy. It's not just an issue of adults and children having intimate relations. There's a lot of other things. The whole societal view of sexuality is completely warped. The fact that a woman's mammary gland being shown on primetime television is cause for massive outrage is just ludicrous. And I was living in Europe at the time that took place. I'm talking about the Janet Jackson incident. And the Europeans they laughed because it's a breast. And the fact that it seems such a bad thing to show an exposed breast to a television audience is beyond comprehension.
Here in Colombia, the age of consent is 14. Does that give you any freedom?
No, not at all.
You don't see 14-year-old girls as attractive?
I find some attractive. I find some adult women attractive.
14's too old for you, though?
I wouldn't say it's too old. It's just not my primary focus. If I've had a lot of relationships with adult women. I've been married. I know a lot of people who can't. But in my case, it's not impossible to have a relationship with an adult.
Hello? I'm just going to run